episode of Progress, Potential, and Possibilities, discussions with fascinating people designing a better tomorrow for all of us. I'm your host, Ira Pastor. Welcome everybody again to another episode of our show. Today bringing you another fascinating guest who is literally on the front of creating a better tomorrow on many different areas. Today we have the honor of being joined by Mansoor Hanif, who is the Executive Director of Emerging Technologies at NEOM, which is a fascinating $500 billion, and that's billion with a B, planned cognitive city and tourist destination located in Northwest Saudi Arabia, where he is responsible for all research and development activities for the technology and digital sector, including space technologies, advanced robotics, human-machine interfaces, sustainable infrastructure, digital master plans, digital experience platforms, and mixed reality. In addition to all of that, he also leads NEOM's collaborative research activities with both local and global universities and research institutions, as well as manages the team developing world-leading regulations for communications and connectivity. Prior to this role, Mr. Hanif also served as Executive Director of Technology and Digital Infrastructure, where he oversaw the design and implementation of NEOM's fixed, mobile, satellite, and subsea networks. An industry leader, Mr. Hanif has over 25 years of experience in planning, building, optimizing, and operating mobile networks around the world. He's a patron of the Institute of Telecommunications Professionals, a member of the steering board of the UK5G Innovation Network, and on the advisory boards of the Satellite Applications Catapult and University College London Electrical and Electronic Engineering Department. Prior to this role at NEOM, he was Chief Technology Officer at Ofcom, the UK Telecom and Media Regulator, where he oversaw security and resilience of the nation's networks. He also served as director of Converge Network Research Lab at British Telecom, where he led research into fixed and mobile networks to drive convergence across their research initiatives. He's been involved in other roles, including at Everything Everywhere, the UK-based telecommunications company. He also held positions at Orange Moldova, Vodafone Italy, overseeing network optimization, capacity expansion, planning, implementation of various new technologies. Holds his Bachelor's of Engineering in Electronic and Electrical Engineering from University College in London, his engineering diploma from École Nationale Supérieure de Télécom in Bretagne. I know I'm pronouncing that wrong, but it sounds great. Anyway, Mansoor Hanif, thank you so much for taking the time out of your schedule to come join us on the show.
Thank you for having me. And I really need to shorten that intro. I think it's a bit of a mouthful.
Well, it shows you've done a lot, and you're going to be doing quite a bit more moving forward. But Mansoor, it's great to have you. I'd love to start things off just a little bit, as we typically do, by getting to know our guest a little bit more. If you could, for the next couple of minutes, just take us on a little journey of everything from where you grew up, when you developed some of these interests in electrical engineering, telecommunications, and a bit of your early career journey that led you to NEOM in the first place. I think that would be a great way to start things off.
Yeah, no, so certainly it's a very long story, so I'm going to have to shorten it for you.
Take your time.
But because I'm quite old, so there's a lot to tell, So I was born in Pakistan. Both my parents were from the Punjab, but I was 2 months old when they moved to the UK in London, so I don't remember very much. I'd like to say I've got a vague memory of the flight, but I don't, And then I was in London till I was 7. Where I was a bit of a cockney initially in South London, and then my dad got a job as a mechanic. He was a mechanical engineer in the west of Ireland, which is where my accent comes from. And it doesn't show up all the time, but when I say 33, for example, it shows up a bit stronger. So I grew up in Ireland, which is fascinating, in Galway, beautiful town on the ocean. With a view over Galway Bay every morning, lots of rain, lots of wind, and a fantastic place to grow up, really. And that's where I was until I was 18. And then when I was 18, I went back to London to study. I went to UCL. But before then, when I was a kid, I realized that I really loved words, and I wanted to be a writer. That was my biggest dream, to be a writer. And I wanted to be a writer before I could write. So I used to just take copybooks and just scribble and fill them up, because I just wanted to pretend I was writing. And then then I started writing stories when I was a kid, and I would sell them locally as a local newspaper. And I was actually amazed that people would actually read them, and they were serialized science fiction stories. So science fiction was my other biggest passion. I was always a massive science fiction fan. And that's pretty much all I read since I was a kid. Doctor Who was my biggest favorite. It's not that well known in the UK, in the US, but
I know it well.
but it really formed my thinking, and I thought, wow, what an amazing role model to have was Doctor Who, saving the planet and doing it with a smile and a sense of humor and a sense of humanity, even though he wasn't human. So that's what drove me. I read only science fiction books. I had a collection of about 180 Doctor Who books, as many as I could find. I was really sure I wanted to be a writer, to the extent that I wrote my autobiography at 10, which I recommend all parents get your kids to do, because it's great fun rereading it for the rest of your life. Because when I was 10, I thought, that's it. I've had all the fun years of my life are done now, and the rest is going to be hard work and study. So I really wanted to be a writer, and I was really interested in science fiction. So of course I started, writing my draft novels when I was a teenager. And then I realized that, I needed some material. I needed to see the world, because I was making stuff up, and I really wanted it to be based on real life. So I said, right, I better get a job where I can travel the world and do crazy things, and hopefully I can be in the center of interesting things happening around geopolitics and stuff. And then one day I'll write my books. And then, what happened? I got this fantastic job, which I'll tell you about in a minute. And I got so caught up in life, and I realized how wonderful life is, that I'm still going to write those books, but I haven't started them yet. So that job that I got was through engineering. I went to UCL to study engineering. When did I actually get to know I wanted to be an engineer? I had no idea. It seemed, this is back in the 90s. It was really hard to get a job at the time. It was a big crisis. You needed to be competitive. There was a lot of hope in electrical engineering and electronic engineering. So that's what I did. And then I realized I liked it. I liked digital in particular. I didn't like analog so much. Analog was a little bit messy, lots of formulas and mathematics, and digital was ones and zeros. And I thought, oh, that's, it's pretty straightforward. It's either 1 or a 0, but then there's a lot of ones and a lot of zeros. So I started to realize I really liked digital. Through that, after graduating in UCL, I got the opportunity to continue to travel in France, and that's what led me to study telecoms in Telecom Brittany. And I'll be honest, it was really just to travel and to learn some skills, learn language skills, position myself on the jobs market. But then I realized that it was actually, I really wanted to travel and see the world and fulfill that mission of knowing the world. And through that path, I ended up getting a job in 1995, 94 in Paris with France Telecom as a radio engineer. The first place they sent me was Lebanon, which was very interesting in 1994. Lebanon was just recovering from, over 15 years of civil war. And there was a lot of people who were not very keen to go there. It was just after this spate of kidnappings, and you still had the Syrians on one side and the Israelis on another. But my boss said, what are you doing Monday? I said, well, nothing special. He said, do you want to go to Beirut? I said, of course. So that's where my love affair with telecoms came in, because I was then, 3 days later, I was driving around the streets of Beirut, which were completely bombed out at the time, and doing measurements, radio measurements and engineering and putting antennas on roofs. And I thought it was the coolest job in the world, because it was really high tech back in 94. And at the same time, it was seeing the world in a way that very few people could. I was up on rooftops in places that people hadn't been for years. But what really struck me then was I was given the north of Lebanon to cover. And well, I went to villages that were like, hidden away in time. And they saw us coming, and every single person in the village would come out of their house and offer us a strong coffee, which meant I didn't get much sleep in Lebanon, because we had to have a coffee in every house. But they treated us like heroes, because they saw that engineers are coming from across the world to rebuild our country. This is the end. This is the new beginning. And it so stunned me that, my job could bring so much happiness and hope to people, that I was very lucky to get that mission very early on in my life and understand how my job can impact people and spur development. And so I became a believer of technology for good. And I was very lucky to get that very early on in my career, and it's just driven me ever since then. So that's really how I got into telecoms and engineering.
Outstanding, outstanding, and yeah, and now beginning on a fascinating new chapter, or really continuing this theme of creating something bigger and better and good. Well, going to the the NEOM sort of the website, and it broadly, in the introduction, NEOM is defined as an accelerator of human progress. And if I may read from the website, NEOM is a new vision of what the future could be. It is an attempt to do something that has never been done before, and it's coming at a time where the world needs fresh thinking and new solutions. Put simply, NEOM will not only be a destination, but a home for people who dream big and who want to be part of building a new model for sustainable living. A fascinating mission. Really is about big dreams, a big future. So could you walk us through a little bit of the history behind NEOM and its creation, and then also, I apologize for the bit of the lesson, but for all of us sitting here in the U.S., there is a sort of a separate but a connected initiative known as Saudi Vision 2030, where major strategic framework to move Saudi away, well, not away, but away from purely its dependence on oil to diversifying its economy in many different areas. Talk about sort of the synergy between the two as you introduce them sort of independently as well.
Yeah, sure. And everything you read in the website is true. I can certify that. The ambition is there. It is a land for dreamers, but I always say it's a land for dreamers and doers, with a big emphasis on the and. Which is what drew me there, because I've always been a dreamer of a better future, but I really like to be able to play a part in that and make an impact and make it happen. And that's really what NEOM is all about. It's about attracting people who want to dream and do. There's lots of places you can dream. There's very few places you can dream and do and get the opportunity to do that. Mm-hmm. And that's why I'm here. And so it is everything you said. In simple terms, we are an accelerator of human progress. And whenever anybody asks me, why am I here? What is it about? That's what it is. Acceleration of human progress in all of its beauty, all of its diversity, all of its challenges. That's really what we are all about. And when I was in London, I had a great job actually as a CTO of Ofcom. I was really enjoying it, was getting into it. But when I met Mansoor, our CEO in London, and in 20 minutes, I could see in his eyes, he was serious about his dream for NEOM and what it meant. And I could see that I was needed here. I was needed here to drive, to encourage, to help people on that journey of becoming the doers as well as the dreamers. So NEOM, its history, if you were really to talk about the history of NEOM as a location, it goes back thousands of years. And NEOM has always been a crossroads. It was a crossroads for humanity. I'm pretty sure that the first humans came out and crossed over NEOM, maybe some place close to where I'm sitting here, as they came out of Africa. It then became a key trade route. It then became a key pilgrimage route for pilgrims going down to Mecca. So it's always been a crossroads. Now it's a crossroads for international trade. We've seen what happened when the Suez Canal was blocked and all the ships were piling up not far from NEOM. So it's not just physical trade, but digital trade now, as digital trade routes started off from the US to Europe, across the Atlantic, and then they went from the US to the Pacific. But now the huge boom in not only Europe, but in Asia, and now Africa, that's finally being connected up by fiber cables, subsea cables, as we speak. Those trade routes are changing, and they're going more east-west, west-east, and we're smack in the middle of that. So NEOM is a key strategic area. But it's really, as I said, the accelerator of human progress within the 2030 vision that's been set out by Saudi Arabia, which I didn't know a lot about before I came here. But when I came here and I realized I came here to be part of NEOM as an accelerator of human progress, but when I realized what's happening in the region, what's happening in Saudi Arabia, it's an incredible transformation. It's absolutely stunning. I had no idea. And it's one of the biggest surprises and pleasures I've had since I've been here, is to realize that not only am I part of NEOM, but NEOM is the accelerator, the motor, the engine of this 2030 vision, which is even bigger. And the impact is huge. And the transformation that's going on in Saudi Arabia at an incredible cracking pace, that you almost feel it every single day, you feel the change happening. And it's so exciting. The impact is enormous, not only on the region, on the whole of the Middle East, but the whole world. Mm-hmm. If when Saudi Arabia achieves that 2030 vision of diversifying its economy, opening its economy, creating new industries, creating new opportunities for the people, especially for the women in Saudi Arabia, who are an inspiration for me every single day that I work with them side by side. It's a really incredible, exciting place to be, and I think it's certainly the place, the area that's changing most in the world today, as far as I can see. So NEOM is creating these new diversified economies within our areas. NEOM is about the size of Belgium, so it's not a city as such. It's an area of several cities. The main one that's well known is the Line. But the pillars of what we're achieving is not only on economic well-being and the diversification of new sectors and acceleration of those sectors. It's also about sustainability, and this was already part of the central vision of building a new sustainable future, very much fueled by advanced technologies, but there shouldn't be a compromise between sustainability and advanced technology. They should work hand in hand, in unison. And this was clearly set out 2 years ago when I first arrived here, but it was a bit of an outlier in terms of focusing on livability, focusing on sustainability and high technology was seemed a bit of a paradox at the time. But as we can see now, pretty much the whole world, partially due to the difficulties of the post-COVID era, has realized we have to change the way we do things and have a new set of values. So that's a little bit about NEOM. Within NEOM, tech and digital technology and digital is one of the sectors that are being developed. Mm-hmm. And as you mentioned, the technology and digital holding company is now a separate entity from the NEOM company. Okay. It's still wholly owned by NEOM, but it may be more diversified in the future. And the tech and digital holding company will now it's got its own board, and it's going to be focusing on products and services in the tech and digital domain, and also putting in place alliances and partnerships. This is not something we'll do on our own. The latest announcements we made were with Oracle on our data centers, and with OneWeb on the LEO satellite connectivity network that we're building together through a joint venture. So hopefully that gives you an idea of NEOM and what it's all about.
Absolutely. And Mansoor, if I could read a little bit from an abstract of yours from, I think, what recent Internet of Things Tech Expo, where you talk about cognitive cities. And if I may read, a cognitive city is a term which expands the concept of the smart city, which the aspect of cognition or refers to virtual environment where goal-driven communities gather to share knowledge. A physical cognitive city differs from conventional cities and smart cities in the fact that it is steadily learning through constant interaction with its citizens to advance information and communication technologies and standards. And based on this exchange of information, it becomes more efficient, more sustainable, more resilient. Talk a little bit about this vision and concept of a cognitive city, because it is a rather unique theme.
Yes, no, with pleasure. So we've talked for years about smart cities, but I think if we were to be perfectly honest with ourselves, I don't think there's any city today that we feel is smart enough for our needs. There's lots of bits and pieces of smart areas within cities. But it really hasn't lived up to the potential of what we consider to be smart. And that's for many reasons. It's not easy to change legacy infrastructure, for example, and in NEOM, we don't have any legacy infrastructure, for example. Mm-hmm. but a lot of it is due to organizational issues, silos within the city infrastructure. So data is not shared between departments. And I think we've all had the experience that we have to fill in a form, so, 17 times right across every city department just to get basic services, for example. Sure. So we estimate that only about 5% of data that's actually available and collected is used to improve the quality of our lives in cities. So something has to change. And the word cognitive is, as you described just now, but it's really in my perspective, it's about understanding humans and understanding our needs. And a city that can really understand what you're all about needs to use a lot more data, but it needs to do that with consent. So the understanding goes both ways, because today it's not clear for us, even the data that is being collected, who's collecting that data, who's using that data, do they have my permission, what services are being given to me? And that causes a lot of concerns and mistrust, and therefore we're not always happy to release our data to the city itself because we don't trust the city. So the cognitive element is about the city understanding you better and adapting itself to your needs, but also you understanding better the city and trusting the infrastructure and having empowerment over how your data is used. And that's really critical to making it really cognitive in the way we would like, and automated and sustainable and human-centric. So let me put it this way. Today, in most smart cities, what we're leaving behind is a snail trail of our digital lives. So whatever we do, wherever we go, there's this trail of data that follows us, and it's there, and we're not really in control of it. We hope that it's being used in the right way by the right people, but we're not in control. We have to trust. Sometimes we don't trust, and therefore we lose out because of the silos and because of the fact that we're not happy giving our consent. Sure. In a cognitive city, such as we're building in NEOM, you should think of your data as your personal halo or your personal aura that you take with you wherever you go. So as you move through the city, the data is being collected, but it's not being left everywhere so that it's out of your control. Mm-hmm. It's with you. So in a mixed reality city such as in NEOM, you would be able to see other people's halos or auras in a way, because through the mixed reality concepts, you will be able to perceive what the other person wants you to perceive. So it's your choice of what you show of your halo, how much of your data you want to be available to companies, to the city, to other people. It's your choice. It can be as big or as small as you want, depending on what you want to show to who. Now, that's not easy to do, and it gives you total control and empowerment. So it's a completely human-centric approach. Mm-hmm. But those are the consent-based systems we're building in NEOM, such as Epsilon is one of which will manage consent, and NEOS, our operating system. So through those elements, we'll make it simple and easy for people to give consent for their data to be visible and used by third parties in a way that you're totally empowered and you're in control. But you also get a visibility of what you're getting back from it. So if you choose at any moment that part of your halo won't be visible to a telecom service provider or an electricity provider, you might not be able to get the best offers. But do you really care? That's your choice. If you don't really care, then you don't have to. So, but we need to make sure that is very easy for people to understand, and that is the challenge that we're facing and dealing with in NEOM.
Excellent. At the beginning, Mansoor, I read sort of through your bio, and in your role as Executive Director of Emerging Technologies, everything, it was a rather broad purview: space, robotics, human-machine interfaces. You've been involved in subsea networks. A very broad purview. Really fascinating bio. Talk a little bit, as a general question, but talk a little bit about sort of what your typical day is like. How do you, obviously after coming in the office and having some coffee and relaxing, what do you decide? How do you decide what to do in any given day? What are you working on? Obviously, there's some robots behind you. I know that's not someone standing very still, but where do sort of the directives come from that say, hey, today we're going to focus on robotics, tomorrow we'll work on X, Y, and Z? Walk us through a little bit of what a day is like in the NEOM world of Mansoor, Hanif.
Well, it's certainly action-packed, I'd say. And I would say that it's never one theme or another, ever. It's always, switching. What I actually love in terms of kind of realizing yourself and giving yourself the maximum possibilities to contribute to a wide range of subjects. So each day will be switching, a half an hour on robotics to space, and then to mixed realities, and then a bit on regulations, and then something on the finance and the budgets. It'll all be mixed in one day, so there'll never be a day where, it's very, very rare that we have a day that's just dedicated to one subject. So it's completely varied. So all of the topics you mentioned would figure in my normal day here, which is very demanding, but it's, as I said, it's such an exciting space where you can feel you can make an impact, that it's really hard to not love it, So we do get very tired, but it's everything at once. NEOM is such a huge project with such huge ambitions and so much going on, that they need people to be fully engaged all the time, and so we're working, at breakneck speed to make things happen. But it's a very long-term project, so a lot of the outcomes of what we're building will only be visible in a few years' time.
Sure. As far as new innovation, so when I go to the website and talks about NEOM will be a hub for innovation where established global businesses and emerging players can research, incubate, and commercialize groundbreaking technologies to help accelerate human progress. If I have come up with a unique robot or some piece of technology that fits into the NEOM vision, do I bring it to you? What's the structure for working with whether university labs, startup companies? How does that all work in the current system of NEOM?
Yeah, so we're all about partnerships. There is no way, even if it was our plan to try and build something like NEOM on our own, there's no way that it would ever be possible. It's just too big. It's just too big. It's enormous. So partnerships are key. When you mentioned that $500 billion estimation of investment, that's not all from the public sector. So initially, what we're very clear on is that starting from scratch is something that we need to start initially and put skin in the game, to put people on the ground like myself who are here, living here, and building from scratch in the beginning. So there's an initial amount of investment that's going in from the PIF, our owner, to build the basic infrastructure. So that's why you've heard so much about last year. Our focus was on the infrastructure, the fiber networks, the subsea cable networks. Now we have the LEO. So all of that is investments we're making up front. And then the second stage is just starting now already, is the large scale partnerships with large scale investors that, such as the Oracle relationship that we just mentioned, and there's many others that are in the pipeline to work on the kind of large scale infrastructures of the city with us. But there's clearly a huge ambition. The ultimate goal is to enable anybody to come to NEOM and build the world's most amazing robot. Today, you can go anywhere in the world pretty much and set up a software company. It's really hard to build a robotics company that's successful. And even some of the best companies simply don't have a business model. So that needs to change. It's so difficult today to become a startup in robotics, because you need to know about software, you need to know about electromechanics, you need to know about materials, you need to know about the cloud, you need to know about connectivity. There's very, very few companies as a startup that have all of that. So, for example, some of the enablers that we're putting in place here are designed to make it as easy to set up a robotics company as it is to set up a software company. That's our goal in 5 to 7 years. I'm just taking the example of robotics as an area we want to accelerate on. So what we'd like to do is put in place the enablers and give startups the access to our cognitive technologies. So we need to build there's no way you're going to have a completely autonomous, sustainable, human-centric city such as the Line without an incredibly powerful compute capability.
Mm-hmm.
So these are our foundation technologies that we're building now as part of the Tech and Digital Holding, together with the digital layer for connectivity, and the contextualization through NEOS and Epsilon. So all of those technologies will power the city, but they can also be made available to ecosystems such as the robotics ecosystem, so that anybody can come to NEOM in the future with a good idea and get access to our, let's say, 3D printing capabilities, to our cognitive compute platform, to the AI functionality that's going to be available over NEOS. For example, it could be speech recognition, it could be visual recognition. So you'd be able to plug and play and put these together and simply just use your human creativity and imagination to build the most amazing solutions out of those elements. Or you could plug in your own if you want to. But the cost of entry, the cost to get going in terms of putting all of those enablers together will be put in place by NEOM. So that's the kind of model that the long-term model is, to have those development centers, such as the Robotics Development Center, the Space Development Center, in a similar way, where we invest in the enablers on the long term, and we then we make available the cognitive capabilities that run NEOM to all of these ecosystems, so that it's much easier for you to set up a small space company or a robotics company and create, the solutions that are going to accelerate human progress. So that's the kind of the longer term partnership. We're seeing now some startups coming to us today already. We try and provide competitions and other opportunities where we can with smaller startups as well. But we really would like to put in place those complete enablement programs, so to make it a lot easier for these companies to come in the future. But we're definitely going to get there.
And you're at sort of the epicenter of this, the cognitive heartbeat, let's say, of NEOM, and that's going to be connecting to everything else that's going to be going on there. So you have renewable energy in the works. You have a fascinating health and wellness vision, regenerative agricultural development. Obviously, you're a telecommunications engineering guy, but what are the other areas you get excited about? Just thinking as you work on sort of the core, the cognitive core of all of this. For Mansoor, Hanif, what are the things that excite you the most? That, hey, I'm excited that 5 years from now I'll be able to tap into my health records and be diagnosed while I'm taking a walk around the Regenerative Agriculture Center. What are some of the things that get you really excited looking out in the future couple of years?
Well, the biggest thing that gets me excited is just walking down from this office down to the canteen and crossing some of the most amazing people from all of those industries you mentioned.
Okay.
And saying hi to them, and there's then telling me, oh, by the way, we're thinking of this idea. What do you think? Or do you think there's some crossover between your the cognitive healthcare diagnostic system you want to build and our cognitive compute, or working with the energy and water team on sustainable solutions? That's an incredible opportunity, and I'm learning every single hour of every single day. So it's the simple fact of having all of these people from all around the world with a single mission to accelerate human progress, but in very, very different fields with different points of view. That diversity in an inclusive environment that we have here, it's a tinderbox for incredible creativity that you cannot get in such a short geographical area anywhere in the world. So when people today, sometimes they want to move to London or, rather than Silicon Valley or other places, it's because of that diversity of having a fintech plus fashion plus media all in one area and that mixing. So imagine we have all of that in NEOM at a small scale now, but growing quickly. And it's just an amazing place to learn, and being able then, I think the biggest quality of people here, apart from resilience of, building an infrastructure from scratch, is that capability to think laterally and join up solutions. And it's that convergence across those areas that we can give them maximum value. And that's where I focus on. So the things that really excite me, first of all, is the approach of doing things from scratch in a new way, as a new template for the cities of the future. And we've talked a lot in the past about, making sure that we have designs that are the security by design for cities, and that is now a must-have as a starting point. But we've now amplified that to say security by design, sustainability by design, and humanity by design. So all of that is now the fundamental bedrock of how we're designing the mixed reality cities. So it has to be human-centric. Technology is fantastic, but it has to reflect who we are.
Sure.
And amplify our humanity, make us more human rather than less human, make us less robotic than we are today. You know, and sustainability, of course, is where we really come into our own with a completely renewable energy system here. I'll give you an example of some of the areas we're working on that really excite me on sustainability. And so, for example, 74% roughly is where we can get to with between solar and wind, which are very complementary here, which is a pretty good percentage if you think about on a countrywide level. So NEOM is going to be its own semi-autonomous region within Saudi Arabia. So within that area, 74% are going to be renewable energies. That still leaves us with 26% that needs to be generated through other means. Now, certainly, we're also producing green hydrogen, which we could use also. But you know, there are some incredible storage solutions that we could do. I mean, for example, we are thinking about making sure that in some of the larger, the larger buildings or the taller buildings that are built here, we could make sure that they have storage built into those buildings. Gravity storage, for example, for very high buildings, or in mountain areas, for example, where we're building tunnels, we can make sure that those cavities then are used for gravity storage, because the biggest cost for a gravity storage system. So these are basically completely renewable systems for storage, where as you have excess renewable power generated during the daytime, you simply have huge weights that are lifted up to a high position. And when you need to use that power, they simply start sinking down and turn turbines to generate power. And all of that is completely renewable. So as we're building the cities, if we have an integrated approach where you build the cities with these storage systems built into the cities, whether it's in the spaces that have been cleared out for creating those tunnels, simply having the storage systems there, or in high-rise buildings where you have areas that are reserved for the gravity storage. That's a whole new integrated approach that shows that what we're actually doing a template for today is something that will be adopted in the future as we all move towards 100% renewable energy. The other example is, for example, on robotics. A lot of people talk about robotics, but I don't know if many people have an idea of how many chips it takes to build, a high-end robot like the one behind me from Engineered Arts. And that's only rising. As we go towards more cognitive robotics, the amount of processing power is going to be higher. So we really need to make sure that, first of all, we design the robots to be energy efficient, but also the fact that we're working side by side with the energy engineers who are working on hydrogen fuel and hydrogen fuel cells, we can put a lot of focus on making sure that green hydrogen fuel cells are a key part of the robotics designs, for example. Plus, we are working with the food sector as well on things like algae, which are high protein food bases that are being used, for example, in space exploration for sustainable missions to Mars. But you could use cladding with algae that can actually be used to fuel robots through a new technology called microbial fuel cells. So we're working with some universities in the UK on prototypes of these microbial fuel cells, where effectively a robot could either be, pretty much eat the algae, or eat your leftovers, or literally eat your lunch or your leftover lunch, and then power up your phone, for example, with the energy that's generated. So the beauty of all of this is that we're building these cities for, hundreds and thousands of robots to live with humans in harmony, as our companions, not our rivals, as our cybros rather than cyborgs, right? So basically what we've decided to do is we're going to build these robo paths across the city where, first of all, mobility will be facilitated safely for these robots. So we won't harm them, they won't harm us. But also the connectivity, we're looking at, terahertz type of communications for really fast, effective connectivity, so that they can connect to the cognitive brain system anywhere in the city. But these pathways will be lit up in such a way so that when the robot is connected to the brain or not. So if the robot is connected to the cognitive compute system, it's fully functional, it's fully cognizant. If it's not lit up in the same way. And so you know that it's autonomous, but it's not going to have the full capability. Plus, along those robot paths, if we are using these algae cladding on the inside of the buildings, the robots can simply stop off for a snack, eat a bit of algae off the wall, and power themselves up and move on. Now, I'm exaggerating a little bit. I told you I wanted to be a writer and I love science fiction.
Still,
I'm only exaggerating a little bit because everything I've just mentioned to you is true, is happening, and can be done. I'm just kind of flowering it up a little bit, but these are the kind of things that we can do. These are the things that excite me about accelerating human progress. It might take us 5-6 years to get there. The other area is, we talked a lot about our prototype Xverse, our metaverse, and that's another area of convergence where there's been a lot of talk about VR. I'm not a big fan of VR myself. It makes me dizzy. I am a big fan of AR and merging the physical and the digital world. And I think now we have the technologies to actually look at merging AR and holograms and the physical infrastructure in such a way to create these amazing new experiences for a metaverse like the cognitive metaverse we're building in NEOM, whereby you can effectively experience the city from anywhere in the world, and to the extent that you can actually interact with people and move objects as if you were at home, through a robotic avatar, which is what this robot behind me is all about. It's the first kind of element that we're looking to build upon. So those kind of experiences where you'll be able to teleport in to NEOM from anywhere in the world and decide how you want to be seen and interact as an AR, as a hologram, I think it's really exciting, and that's what really drives me every day.
Yeah, and it's fascinating, and you keep going back to this theme of convergence, which I think is really such a hot word nowadays, and you really are an example of what it means to converge all these tools, what we have, what's coming in the next couple of years, and it's going to be a fascinating future as you slowly but surely integrate all of these really fascinating technologies. Mansoor, I asked you earlier about your typical day in the office at NEOM. I want to ask you now about sort of what because obviously you're building the cognitive city of the future, but NEOM also talks about that it is or will be a tourist destination. Tell me a little bit about what you do in your downtime. Do you enjoy swimming in the Red Sea? Do you take walks in the desert? And then also, I was in Jeddah a couple of years ago. Are there any tourist amenities nowadays that if I was visiting, I could come visit NEOM for a day, or is that still something that's not open yet?
Well, the biggest tourist amenity we have is NEOM itself.
Okay.
And it's just the most stunning, amazing, varied, beautiful landscape. We've got, this wonderful red desert area.
Sure.
We've got an amazing mountain area with a lot of history as well, Jebel al-Lawz. And then we've got the Red Sea, which is just stunning. I mean, the coral reefs here are pristine. It's just fantastically beautiful. So yes, all of that is visitable today. There's not so much amenities yet available because we're in the process. It's also a big construction site. But what's very clear is that only 5% of the territory of NEOM is going to be built on. So 95% is going to be conserved. And we want to make sure that beauty is conserved and actually improved, because a lot of the legacy infrastructure that's kind of still out there in the rural areas will be removed to make sure it goes back to its natural condition. So that's the first big asset we have in NEOM is NEOM itself, a beautiful area which is unique, and I love just driving around and visiting it. The climate is wonderful. Today is like 28 degrees, 29 degrees Celsius. Absolutely the perfect temperature by day and by night. So many people go swimming, go snorkeling, go diving. Those are the biggest pastimes. Go hiking in the desert, go camping in the desert. There's no big towns as such around here, but there's also some historical sites near Al Bada, which is the biggest town in NEOM, which are being renovated and conserved. And these are kind of biblical sites that you can visit, where the legends are that Moses spent some time, several years here in the area.
Mm-hmm.
So if you like archaeology, if you like history, if you like nature, if you like active sports, all of those, are available now or very soon. In terms of the first actual amenities, in terms of hotels, etc., we do have a number of hotels here, but they're very busy with people who are coming, helping us build NEOM at the moment.
Okay.
But for tourism, I think there might be the first hotels might be either next year or the year after. We're also developing the islands around NEOM for amazing cruising experiences. So yes, it's tourism is one of the biggest potentials for NEOM, and I've just been stunned by the whole scenery here. And then here on the community, we've got sports capabilities. There's a lot of people play football every night.
Mm-hmm.
They play touch rugby. There's tennis. There's swimming. There's a gym. You have a lot of people who got lots of muscles here because they spend a lot of time working out. But you know what is the most amazing thing? I was away now traveling for 3 weeks, and I came back and I just felt so much at home. And it's just this village community, which is unique. And I had my whole family here for 5 months during the lockdown in Europe.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure they will never, ever forget it. And this whole sense of, people coming together and building a new future, I absolutely love it. And it's really my home from home now. I've been here 2 years. And that's the most amazing thing about NEOM, is that atmosphere of people working together in the village community, which we want to make sure we scale up and make sure it goes right through the cognitive cities as well, and not just in this small community we've started with.
It's a fascinating story, and I'm really going to. I've for the last couple of years sort of been following it since its inception, and now that you're really putting everything together, it's going to be really amazing watching the next couple of years and what transpires. But wishing you, and I mean, obviously you have a lot in your portfolio, Mansoor, but it's going to be a fascinating future, no doubt. For everybody that's going to be listening to this particular episode on our podcast networks or watching on the YouTube channel, you've been listening to Mansoor Hanif, Executive Director of Emerging Technology at NEOM, laying out an amazing vision of what the future is going to be in this fascinating, as they say, accelerator of human progress. Mansoor, I want to thank you for taking time out of your schedule to talk to us for a little while. Thank you for everything that you're doing there. And as we like to say on our show, thank you for helping to create a better tomorrow. You're clearly doing that and at the epicenter of it all. Thanks,
Ira. And I would just like to just add that, I've always thought that, from my perspective, being happy in life, it's really impossible unless you know who you are and what are you capable of. And that's a lot harder than it may seem for people. But, traveling around the world, changing from country to country has really helped me to understand who I am slowly, and then realize that, basically I'm happy when I'm using everything I have at my full potential for humanity and myself, and humanity and, my family, for everybody. And so I think that the experiences you get in working on something like NEOM, and the varied experiences you get, and also digital experiences that we will be building, are all designed for helping each one of us and as a community understand who we are, who we really are, what makes us tick, what is our capability, and then being able to realize that capability, I think, is the biggest satisfaction we can have as humans, and putting that at service of humanity. So this is for me the biggest element of NEOM. It's an acceleration not only of human progress, but individual progress, of individual identity, understanding your capability, and helping us realize our maximum potential. And that's why it's so exciting to be here. And I really hope that some of you who are listening will come and join us one day and be part of this wonderful adventure. Absolutely. Wonderful message. Really wonderful message. Great seeing you, Mansoor. Thank you so much for the time. Likewise.